Well, Uncle Dan.
What? Yes. Hello.
There's one thing that is hot on the minds of all of our friends and listeners out there.
Yeah, that's true.
That we don't cover often enough. And you know what that is?
Those Marshmallow Circus peanuts.
Marshmallow Circus Peanuts is second, actually.
Oh, shit. Okay.
First is hydrology and subjects related to hydrology and the management of water.
Yeah, water management's a big deal.
Yeah, so sorry we've been remiss, guys. Uncle Doug's here with the weekly hydrology report.
You give the people what they want.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I thought, we often on the show, we dive into specific stories in various scriptures and kind of pull them apart.
We do.
So, given the hydrology theme, I thought we could dig into the parting of the Red Sea and talk about that for a little while.
The fact of the parting of the Red Sea.
Of course.
Hang on. Spoiler alert. Did you just give away the game right at the beginning? God.
Sorry, but spoiler alert, trigger alert.
Should we start over?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all you need to know. It happened.
It happened.
Charlton Heston, part of the Red Sea.
There was a very clear thing
Then he became the head of the NRA. Then he died.
Yep.
You can have my Red Sea when you pry it from my cold, dead
wet hands.
So let's dive in. So we are, of course, in the book of Exodus, chapter 14. And just to bring everyone up to speed on what's happened so far, after 430 years of slavery, Moses has managed to free the Jews after God inflicted 10 plagues on the Egyptians, including turning the Nile to blood, myriad pestilences, flaming hail, and then finally killing the firstborn male offspring of not only all the Egyptians, but all the animals.
Wait, he killed the animals?
He killed the firstborn of all the animals.
Just to be.
I didn't know that.
Just to be a shit.
That's a dick move right there.
You're just being a shit.
The kids I can handle, okay?
Right? That much makes sense. All that makes sense.
Yeah.
But by the way, the flaming, the hail that burns as fire upon the ground, that's some pimp ass shit right
That's
there.
pretty cool.
I
Yeah.
was liking that one.
I know, and it's like frogs and flies, and then it's like, okay, fine, flaming hail.
Right.
Open with flaming hail. Just my advice.
That's the only one you need.
That's right.
And I like it.
You start with flies, you're just annoying everybody.
It's just taking credit for the weather.
Yeah, I like that Pharaoh at some point at like Pestilence 7 is like, yeah, still not convinced.
Yeah,
Pestilence
exactly.
8, yeah, I don't know. It could just be happening.
That's right. So finally, the Pharaoh, who's popularly thought to be Ramses II, because the supposed timelines jive, and because if you're going to choose a Pharaoh to be the villain of your story, go big.
Sure.
Yeah.
Finally, he'd had enough, and he allowed the Jews to leave. And again, none of this is recorded in the Egyptian history, not the 430 years of Israelite slavery,
Right.
the plagues, or the death of the firstborn.
There's literally no evidence that even the slavery happened.
Exactly.
Like the base point from which this story arises.
The grand monuments of Egypt were not built by slaves. We know that. They were built by seasonal workers.
So
Mexicans, then.
That's right.
That's right. Build the wall.
Build the pyramid.
It's just as effective. So to guide them through the wilderness, God sent a pillar of cloud in the daytime and a pillar of fire at night that led the Israelites on their way.
Oh, that's fun.
So all this is to say, if there was ever a group of people that had proof positive of God's existence, it was the Israelites at this time and place.
Which is why we know for a fact that they didn't just immediately turn away from that God the second they had a chance to.
Oh, spoiler alert.
What?
They turn against God and Moses nearly every other verse.
It is shocking.
It doesn't matter what they see. Next verse, like, Moses, what the hell?
The second the tablets of the Ten Commandments were half an inch out of frame, they were building another idol. Like they were still in the room, they were just behind a bookshelf, and they said, well, let's build an idol.
They didn't destroy the golden calf, they just kind of covered it up.
Right.
So they doubt Moses so much that the writers of the 1956 film that hopefully we've all seen, The Ten Commandments, had to invent a character, Dathan, played by Edward G. Robinson, to embody this constant doubting. So basically, they couldn't weave it into the story. They had to invent a character that was this kind of petulant, doubting Thomas.
Right.
And
doubting Dathan, thank you.
Doubting Dathan. And by the way, if you go look at the IMDb page for Edward G. Robinson, it's pretty amazing. Between 1916 and 1973, he was in like 6 to 10 movies a year.
Yeah.
It's bananas.
Well, that's how the system used to be. Like the studios basically
the old studio system.
They owned people.
Yeah.
And they would march you from your Bible movie in Studio A.
Yeah.
And by the time you got to Studio B, you're wearing a gangster suit, and holding a Tommy gun, right?
It's amazing that they didn't have like continuity errors where like we're in a 20s gangster movie, somebody wanders in a cowboy hat
or a space suit.
Right.
So, do you know what Edward G. Robinson's last film was?
No.
Soylent Green.
Oh, and then he was processed.
That's right.
Because it's people.
That movie was made of people.
And again,
Spoiler alert.
we're doing 6 degrees of Charlton Heston, right?
Yo, totally. So, and if any listeners have not seen the Cecil B. DeMille, The 10 Commandments, stop listening right now and go watch that movie.
It only takes 10 hours.
It only takes 10 hours.
It's a pretty amazing movie, actually.
It's amazing. It's not only for the overacting and scene chewing, but the set design is, because there's no CGI.
Right.
All those sets they built, they're unbelievable.
Yeah, and the special effects were all these really primitive compositing that are
still look kind of cool.
and the special effect in question, the parting of the Red Sea, was kind of mind blowing to movie audiences.
Oh,
And
yeah.
wasn't it a series of oil paintings that they kind of cartoonized?
Yeah, I think
Anyway.
it was an animated oil painting.
I do love. I will say that about that movie. Some of my very first crushes on women
Oh yeah.
were Egyptian women throwing roses out and yelling Moses,
Yeah.
Moses.
Just not
Oh, yeah.
clearly not wearing bras.
Wearing-
we were allowed to watch that. as kids.
Wearing those, just loosely draped in chiffon.
Dan's getting
gossamer dresses.
far away. And by the way, if you can't stand all 10 hours of that movie, there is an amazing little mashup somebody made on YouTube called 10 Things I Hate About Commandments, I think.
That's right.
Where they recut the 10 Commandments like it's a high school,
Like a trailer for a rom-com.
like a trailer for a rom-com. It's fucking hilarious. Whoever that is, you're a genius. I love you.
And then, Yul Brynner's Ramses II is worth the watch alone.
Yeah.
Moses, Elliot. I'm not going to do it.
Moses.
On a quick side note, I was visiting Uncle Mark in California one time when they were filming a movie outside of the Mann Chinese Theater, right on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Yeah.
So there's all the stars, and then right in front of the Mann Theater, there's all the impressions of the hands of the movie stars.
Right.
And I just noticed I was standing right next to Charlton Heston's handprints. So, of course, I put my hands in his, and they fit so perfectly, I thought something was going to happen. The stone tablet was going to slide down or something.
And it just goes right into the NRA boardroom where they're all assembled around the table.
And I'm kinged.
Yes. At last.
Unfortunately, it didn't
I don't
happen.
know if that's something to be proud of or not. And
I don't know
also,
what to make of it.
like that's how you got that herpes. Let's be very clear.
That's
don't
fine. That's fine with me if you believe that.
don't put your hands where everyone has put their hands. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, so let's pick up the narrative in chapter 13, and in the spirit of my new biblical experimentation, this is from the New International Version. So,
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, wow.
you've gone mad.
I'm doing it.
the NIV.
Doug's gone electric.
All right, verse 17. When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them by the road to the Philistine country, though that was shorter. For God said, if they face war, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led the people around by the desert road toward the Red Sea. The Israelites went up out of Egypt ready for battle.
Okay, hold on.
So,
Okay.
So God thought that if they saw some armed conflict,
yeah,
they might decide to go back to slavery.
they
You
were
know what? Slavery's better than this.
exactly.
Right.
That is exactly what he thought.
Okay, so basically, God has as much faith in the Israelites as they have in him. I don't see this relationship working out.
That's exactly right.
You guys should see other people. God, you should choose other people.
So yeah, and there's so a couple things here. First, God's a major dick. He makes them walk further than they would need to walk.
Well, that's established.
yeah.
Yes.
And second, although it says the Red Sea, many scholars think that this is a mistranslation of the Hebrew Yam Suf, and should actually be Sea of Reeds or Sea of Seaweed. So,
What?
does it matter if what is to follow takes place on the Rift Sea that separates the Arabian Peninsula from the continent of Africa, that's up to 220 miles wide, or some brackish wetland? I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah. It's funny because I just pulled up a Google map of the Red Sea, of the area, and if we were to assume that these Hebrew slaves started out in or around Cairo area / Alexandria area,
Right.
and they're headed toward Jerusalem / Israel or whatever,
Easterly.
Yeah.
there is no Red Sea between those
Right.
places.
But you know what is in between them is the Nile River Delta.
Sure.
And so,
Which is probably muddy.
brackish, nasty, reedy, swampland.
Yeah.
So, take it or leave it. So, now they go to chapter 14 where the Israelites have camped at, I know you guys know this, Pi Hahiroth. Come on, we went to school together.
Oh, fuck.
Between
it was on the
Migdal-
tip of my tongue.
Between Migdal and Balzaphon.
Yeah.
That's what it says.
Well, there's a KOA there. Right. And that's a guarantee of quality.
I've played Balzaphon. It's fun with other boys. Never mind. Go on.
Instrument.
Go on.
Okay, so at this point, they've escaped Egypt, and the Pharaoh has come to terms with this. So God hardens Pharaoh's heart and mentally makes him decide to chase after the Israelites and slaughter them.
Wait, God makes Pharaoh chase them?
God changes Pharaoh's mind. It's like, they're out. They've made it. Pharaoh's okay with it. Okay.
Why does he change their mind?
Because he wants...
He just engineered these fucking 10
You know what?
plagues to get them out of there.
You know what? The story got boring.
God says he wants to destroy the Egyptian army to show everyone that he's the man.
Oh, okay.
So he's got to...
So he can't just zap them all.
No.
They've got to be pursuing or
He's got
doing
to
it.
ramp up the drama.
He's setting them up to fail. I get it. Okay.
All right, so off they go with 600 chariots to murder all the Jews. The Jews see them coming and instantly turn on Moses. So chapter 14, verse 11. They said to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, 'Leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians'? It would have been better for us to serve in Egypt than to die in the desert." Where's your God now, Moses?
Boy, these people.
Yeah.
Yeah. All he's done is lit our way through the night with pillars of fire.
Plagues and firstborn deaths and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, this Moses has been calling in airstrikes and just
right.
destroying Egypt, and you're like, wow, suddenly I got no faith in this guy.
What have you done for me this afternoon?
Right.
Okay, so Moses answered the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring to you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again." I don't want to do it. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again.
That is the worst Heston I've ever heard in my life.
It's kind of a walk-in Heston.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And then, okay, here it comes. This is the heat of the meat. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east winds and turned it into dry land.
Oh, it took all night?
It took all night. It was windy.
He couldn't just do it instantly.
No.
This is where DeMille lied to us.
A bit, right? It doesn't have the same oomph.
A bit.
Yeah, when Moses stretched out his arms.
Okay, so the easterly wind.
Yeah.
So they were headed east.
Yeah, I guess
right?
so.
Is
Yeah.
Is that what the map
Yes.
says?
Yeah.
And a wind from the east.
So the wind was at their backs, I suppose. And
Okay.
it blew all night.
Oh, yeah. Easterly would mean it's blowing toward the east.
Toward the east. So, okay. So the tide went out.
Basically.
Or
All night long.
Yeah.
And okay.
But let's remember one thing. The tide goes out every 6 hours, right? So it takes longer for the Red Sea to part from the easterly wind than it does for the tide to go
12
out.
hours.
No, it's
6. That's
it's
right.
6.
It goes out.
Out and in.
Yeah,
never a
12 hours.
miscommunication.
Out and in twice a day.
Never a miscommunication. So, how fast were the chariots going?
I don't know. I know, right?
Also-
well, yeah.
Well, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, the chariots were stopped by a pillar of fire. So
Right.
God stopped them
Okay.
and held them at bay while he drained the sea overnight.
Right.
He could have maybe burned them up with the pillar of fire. I don't
And the
know.
pillar of fire wasn't enough for Pharaoh to be like, you know what, fuck it.
Exactly.
Wait a minute. I think you mean he drained, because we were talking about this. It's marshland, right?
He drained the swamp.
Drained the swamp.
That's right.
Drain the swamp.
Drain
Pillar of
the
fire. Pillar of smoke.
I knew I'd heard that before. So we get to verse 24, and to your point, Mark, God says, well, here's the scripture, 24. "During the last watch of the night, the Lord looked down from the pillar of fire and cloud at the Egyptian army and threw it into confusion. He jammed the wheels of their chariot so they had difficulty driving. And the Egyptians said, quote, 'Let's get away from the Israelites. The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt.'" Obviously.
Well,
Right.
that's
Right?
Well, but then
the logical conclusion, yes.
What game is God playing here? Because the Jews are standing by waiting for the tide to go out, and they got a nice breeze, and then there's a pillar of fire, and then these confused Egyptians, and God dispatched to chase down the Jews so he could kill them, but now he's like, well, I'll tangle up their wheels.
I know. So that's where we are.
Typically in screenwriting or literature, you say, what is a character's motivation?
Right. And what can we?
The fuck is he doing?
What's he doing? And if you can pull something out of the story and it doesn't change the story, pull it out.
Yeah.
Which is basically most of the Bible.
Right.
Okay. So, of course, Pharaoh's heart is hardened, and he commands his chariots to charge, which they do. And then the waters come crashing back in, killing all of the Egyptians, their chariots, their horses, and the Pharaoh himself, as we'll learn in chapter 15.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So according to this account, the most powerful Pharaoh in Egyptian history, one of the most well-known rulers in history at all, it turns out died in an event that was never recorded, chasing a group of people that were never recorded by the most record-keeping people in history. So there it is.
Yeah. So, okay.
Yeah, Pharaoh II died in the...
Ramses II.
Ramses II, sorry.
Yeah, didn't they discover Ramses II's body?
Yeah, I think he's Tutankhamun.
Yeah. No, he's not.
No, he's not Tutankhamun. He's his own guy.
Ramses II.
But he did.
But
he
they
did
had
go
something
in
common.
Yeah, he did go on a tour.
What did they have in common?
Tutankhamun.
Oh my God!
They had Tutankhamun.
Oh, fuck.
Wow. Okay.
And scene.
Don't
Okay.
worry. Don't worry, everybody. We don't pay Doug. Don't worry.
All right, so chapter 15, by the way, is one long, painful song of praise to the murderous and manipulative Lord that the Israelites will turn on in verse 2 of the next chapter.
It's amazing. It's funny. I did long ago. I had a blog, and I did a blog post about this story.
Yeah.
And one of the funny things that you wisely chose to skip over because it's not pertinent to the Red Sea itself, to the parting of the sea, is that I had remembered that they made a golden calf when they got to the Promised Land or whatever.
Yeah.
Or when they got to the
Mount Sinai.
Mount Sinai.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait a minute. The fuck did they get gold? And so I had to go back and a couple chapters earlier, when the Exodus is starting, God commanded them to go to all of their slave owners
And take their gold.
and borrow their gold.
That's right.
And what's amazing is we're meant to believe that the slaves went to their masters and said, "Can I borrow your gold?" And the masters were like,
You're going to bring it back, right?
"Yeah, that's cool."
Why does one borrow gold?
At what point does that? Yeah, and also, if you know for a fact that
Doug
you
is
have no intention of returning something,
Yeah.
that's not borrowing.
Doug has occasionally borrowed my chop saw, but I just need to borrow this gold to change a tire.
No one's ever borrowed gold in all of history. You take gold.
Yeah,
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And so we all know the slavery, the Jewish slavery in Egypt was not a historical fact. It didn't happen. But you're leaving, personally depriving your master of his property, which is your body and your labor, and taking his money. And he's like,
look, if this were a true story, and you were and you were actually a slave and had been your whole life, fucking take your master's gold.
Sure.
I'm fine with that.
oh, I'm not questioning the morality of it. I'm just questioning the fucking master's judgment.
But it's clearly never happened. That's the point. The point.
right.
Oh, if you're a slave, fucking take everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
take the gold out of his mouth.
most likely none of this happened. However, as we all know, the Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible, of which Exodus is number 2. These were compiled from several different sources.
It's a steaming number 2. Is
That's
what it
right,
is.
it is. In this story, we see at least 3 or possibly 4 sources from which the writers of Exodus took this story. In the oldest, God blows the sea back with a strong east wind. Number 2 is Moses stretching his hand out over the water. In the third, God clogs the chariot wheels of the Egyptians. In this version, the Egyptians don't even enter the water. And fourth is the song in the next chapter called the Song of the Sea, where God casts the Egyptians into Tehemat, or the abyss. So was it a particularly high tide? Was it chariot wheels getting clogged by reeds? Or just straight up bullshit? As with all these clearly metaphorical stories, much backfill has been attempted by people that ought to know better. People have pointed to tidal bores and storm surges to argue that, hey, it could have happened.
Yeah, freak waves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever.
One of the accounts that we've talked about when we talked about the 10 plagues was that there was a volcanic eruption that caused all of this. And then this same version says that caused the Red Sea to recede like Yellowstone Lake is doing because of volcanic forces.
Right.
So, anyway.
Right. So all those natural phenomenon,
Yeah.
10 in a row.
Exactly.
There was a big swarm of flies. The river turned red. The thing and the thing and the thing. And it all broke the Jews' way.
Right, exactly.
Because
Exactly.
if we know anything about the Jews, it's they are lucky.
Would it surprise you to know that 3 other Israelites parted the Jordan River in similar fashion to Moses?
That's right. Joseph did with
Joshua.
the ark. Joshua with the ark. Right.
Yep, Joshua stopped the flow of the river, Jordan, causing a big mountain of water to form upstream so the priests could carry the ark across.
That's right. I remember that.
And then Elijah parted the Jordan River by...
You know what happened?
What?
When they caused that huge flood upstream, Noah built his ark up there. There was almost like an ark-to-ark fucking thing going
He
on.
just sailed by.
Yeah. Took their ark the fuck out. Ark on ark violence, man. Nobody ever talks about it.
So Elijah parted the Jordan River by slapping it with his robe. And,
Like Benny Hinn.
and then Elisha parted the Jordan River by slapping it with Elijah's robe.
Well, when you got a trick that works, go with it.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
a good robe. I want that robe.
That's the plot from
I have
Prestige.
I have been caught on the wrong side of a river a time or two. It'd be nice to have a robe
Yeah.
that you could just
Yeah.
Always carry a robe.
Always carry a robe or an ark.
that particular robes especially.
So there it is. There's the parting of the Red Sea.
Wow, I'm convinced.
Yeah, I suddenly I'm a Christian again. Hooray!
You laid out all the evidence, and I think it's unassailable.
Yeah.
Right? So, wow.
Let's get out of here.
With
Good
that,
times.
let's move on.
Let's move on.